Village discussion, they need about 10 minutes because he's going to a conference in Traverse City. So if it's okay with the board, can Jason go? And John Hines isn't here yet.
Yeah. Oh, John Newman.
Newman, yeah. Okay. Jason, would you like to start? And I apologize, I didn't know about this until.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. Jason Icoangeli, the Township's Planning Director. I wanted to just take a minute to talk to you about the three memos that the Planning Department submitted on behalf of SME and Homrich with regard to the Galt Village demolition project. And if you'll bear with me here, I'm just trying to get to my position within the packet. Let's see here.
While you're looking for it,
Yes.
basically, this is a final change order.
That's my understanding. So the change order for Homrich, which I'm still scrolling through to my memo, is approximately $21,000 change. And the change is being requested. Oh, okay. I think I'm supposed to
Here you
be
go,
in there,
Jason.
but thank you.
You're welcome.
The change order that's being asked for is in the amount of $21,038, which would bring the total project sum to $813,289.50. And the request is being asked for is that shortly after the Board of Trustees approved the last change order request, when they were inside of the units removing the carpeting, which was a part of the first change order, a skid steer inadvertently busted a concrete subfloor, exposing additional asbestos material underneath. And at the time that it was discovered, Homrich decided to just go ahead and abate the asbestos and not to stop any of the work in order to seek the additional funding. And so now at this point, they're requesting from the board these additional funds in order to pay themselves back for the removal of the pipe. And so a portion of this pipe will still remain underneath the concrete slab until such time that the slab is removed, because we don't want to disturb the slab due to unexplored environmental contamination that may be there. So as a part of this process, they're going to GPS the location of where the pipe is, and then they're also going to feed a tracer wire, which is just simply a metal wire that can be picked up with a metal detector through the pipe, so that in the future, when the decision's made to remove the foundation, they'll be able to identify exactly where the pipe is at, because they're anticipating they're going to cut the pipe flush, and then they're going to cover it and seal it with concrete so that it stays unexposed and doesn't fill with water or, deteriorate even more. So they want to be able to come back and locate that pipe at a later date. But that's the request for Homrich's change order number 2. So I'm happy to answer questions about that change order if you have any.
Questions or comments on board? Mr. Winters, have you reviewed this?
I actually talked with Jason Lafayette, who also kind of reiterated what Jason just advised the board, that they've made tremendous progress out there. They're continuing to, meet the October 6th deadline. But this one involving additional asbestos was something that came about as a result of actually doing the work. And obviously, Any delay would have just pushed this project back further. So it is a $21,000 change order, all of which are going to be added to the final tally, so to speak. So when we return this to circuit court for a money judgment, those dollars will be added to the total amount.
Any questions or comments? They've done a great job as far as the removal process and orderly and the water, so dust wasn't getting, and moving very professionally and quickly, it seems to me, when we go by.
I had only one call to our department during the entire operation, and that was just as the building started to come down. We had one resident call to complain that she was starting to get headaches.
From the noise.
You know, that she had mentioned that she was getting headaches and she believed it was because the building was coming down. And we told her that we would get her the air quality numbers, and we did. That's when we asked Jason Lafayette to provide us with those air quality numbers that I think were distributed to the board a few weeks ago. But there were some days where there was no fibers found in the air, and everything was always below the EPA's standards for environmental or asbestos abatement as far as fiber concentrations in the air. So they did a very good job of abating all of the asbestos and other environmental contaminants there. And then they've, in the last few weeks, been moving very quickly with regard to the actual demolition of the structure itself.
And I think a lot of residents think we own it. And so, and what's the next steps? That's a lot of questions that people are asking him.
So those are all good questions, and those are questions that the township as a whole still needs to kind of assess and figure out how what the next chapter is as far as Galt Village goes, because as you just mentioned, it's private property still, and so we'll have to wait and see what Mr. Hall, the current property owner, does with regard to his taxes and things of that nature to kind of get a better understanding where it may go, if that's tax foreclosure or if he decides to try to sell it on the private market, even though there's liens involved, which those will deter people potentially from wanting to buy it on the open real estate market. So there's still a lot of questions that even, you know, the planning department has as to how the property will, whose hands it will say end up when eventually, or who will be the developer in the future. And so we'll just have to wait a little bit longer and see how this process plays out, and then how Mr. Hall decides to address this situation. So
I know in the beginning we tried to get brownfield redevelopment. We asked the county and asked the owner, and they did not want to do that at that time. So hopefully that changes, and whatever happens, we do a lot of community engagement and outreach.
absolutely. Yeah, I think moving forward, regardless of what Mr. Hall decides to do, if the township gets involved in any way, we'll continue down this path of doing environmental due diligence and making sure that everything is respectfully cleaned up with regard to environmental contamination that may be there, and, you know, make it a successful project at some point very soon, hopefully.
Any other questions, or Trustee Swenson?
Then at first. So my first question is about like the change order, because I know the last time we did a change order, we had residents here and they were concerned because, you know, people had a chance to go in, they had a chance to bid, and then it came back, and I think there was the feeling that night, I'm describing what I was hearing, that is that a fair system if they bid and then they bid low and then they come back and they tell us? And then we were able to explain, no, because of the situation, there are just some things that people wouldn't have been able to bid because the building itself, they didn't have the chance to get in there and go under things. And so there's going to be stuff you're going to find. So that made sense. On this one, if I'm understanding you right, they're in there, they're doing the work they're doing, and a piece of concrete from machinery got broken. So So that one seems a little iffy to me, right? Like if they're in there and they're doing their work and they had to bid it, and I'm not saying they did anything wrong or whatever, but then it becomes like who's responsible for that part? Because are we responsible for equipment that caused a problem, or are they because they bid it? So that's just maybe there's not really a question in there. I'm just trying to understand what happens in that kind of case, because we did receive feedback from residents that was reasonable. I think our response was reasonable, but this one seems a little hard to explain that way.
No, and I understand your sentiment. Yeah, I mean, the asbestos-containing pipe was found due to damaging an undiscovered concrete subfloor, and the pipe underneath it tested positive for ACM, or asbestos-containing material. So, again, they thought that it was prudent to not come back before the board when it was initially found, which was back probably a couple of months ago when the abatement was going on. And to slow down the project, and that they would come back after the abatement was finished to try to seek reimbursement. So, yeah, I mean, they're requesting a refund, or not necessarily a refund, but they're requesting the change order to recoup the cost of the expense of abating the pipe that was discovered through carpet removal with a skid steer. So
Okay.
I don't want to try to defend how it happened or anything like that. I just want to, it's just, and I don't know.
And I don't want to appear harsh for the work that's been done, because I am grateful for every step that's been done to take care of our residents in the most appropriate way. From what I can see, when I get out there and I look at it, they have done everything they told us that they would do. You've done everything that you were asked to do to make sure the neighborhood knew. I really am extremely grateful for everything that's been done. But again, at the end of the day, we're responsible for the taxpayers' money. And I don't know, maybe, I don't know what the whole cost is, maybe some kind of cost sharing. I don't know. I'm just asking the question because I don't know. And I want to be able to tell residents so that they can feel good about it. I want the company that did the work to feel like we're reasonable, because if it ever had to happen again, I'm grateful we had companies of the caliber that were doing the work, because it's been done well. The monitoring's been done well. I'm just asking the question to understand better. We have an attorney can also tell us like what the rules are about that contracting. I mean, I'm just asking it to ask.
Sure.
Okay, and in no way am I saying that the companies or the people who are involved or individuals. It's really not about that. It's just about like what's the reasonable thing to do in this case. That's the first question. So if you want to help with that.
Good evening. Jason Lafayette with SME. So I can elaborate on some of the details of that a little bit. So as Jason mentioned, this material was discovered fairly early on in the process, where we had gone and asked for a change order, and but Homrich was back underway, working, moving quickly, making progress, and the optics didn't appear great to present that at the time. So, but what had happened was, with this specific material, and there was so many different things going on the project, some of the details get confused, but actually the cementitious pipe that was asbestos, that was found, but that's outside of any type of a scope. That's left there and that's staying there. It's beneath the concrete slab. It was actually, when the building was constructed, it was clearly laid and then the concrete slab poured. And so that's going to stay there. That will be there, and that's not being touched as part of the scope, because the slab of the building will remain. What this change order number 2 from Homrich represents is, as part of the other, the removal activities for abatement for the building, one item that wasn't included in that was removal of carpets that are not asbestos containing. And so the scope was related to only asbestos-containing materials that had to come out of the building, that could present a hazard to residents if left there once the building was demolished. So, but the township and the team discussed the aesthetics of leaving carpet on the building slab after the building's gone, and as that weathers and decays, you can imagine it would start flapping in the wind and not look good on the site. So it was asked of Homrich to also include removal of that carpet within the scope for the project. And when they initially did that, we pushed pretty hard on the removal rate for that, and they backed off on their unit pricing for removal of the carpet because it was a non-asbestos material. And so we came to a common place on that, and that got included in the scope. In this specific unit where this change order is related, I think to recoup some of their costs for this, they were using heavy machinery to remove the carpet rather than just manual labor. And in the process of it, it removed a thin, about 3/4 inch layer of self-leveling material that was placed on top of a former asbestos mastic at some point in time. So if you can imagine, the logistics of that was that had that cementitious self-leveling material not been lifted up, it would have been forever entombed in there and unknown to anybody. But because of the mechanism of how they were doing that and removing the carpet, trying to be more efficient for the project, it was exposed and discovered, and now it's material that if it's not removed, it's going to exist and eventually degrade by weather and, become a hazard. So that's where we felt that it did need to be included in the scope of removal.
And then the other question I have is that, so now we have this known, before we're operating from the idea that leaving concrete intact is the best route to go, because if we had done that, then we might have things that were, like to leave I think you're the person who explained this to us, right? To leave it encapsulated at the top is a safer place to go, right? So now we know at least one unknown, right? So what can we do to make sure at the end of the project that the next step that someone's going to have to take is fully documented in a way that lets them move forward with at least the knowns that we have, so that nobody's starting like at zero? Because, the hope is that this gets further taken care of in a way that's going to be a positive for our community. But we don't want somebody to have to start at zero. It's going to cost more. It's going to do all that kind of stuff. And so, the next person who's going to work on this should know, okay, this is at least what we know. It may not be very much, but at least this is something you're going to have to take care of. Like, how will we take care of that on our end or your end, or whoever's got to do it to get all, because, it's going to be done. People are going to go. We don't know when this next thing's going to happen. How do we make sure that we're good stewards of this final part of the project, so when the next project takes place, whoever's responsible for being good stewards can do that in the right way?
It's a really good question. And so after the conclusion of this project, SME will prepare a closeout report for the project that documents all the activities that were performed and the results. And a perfect example of that was this cementitious pipe that's included in the concrete slab, and we actually met with the Department of Environmental Quality, or now EGLE, and their air quality division, and we discussed this because that pipe is one example where it's asbestos containing, it's in the slab, it's staying now, but at some point in the future, when somebody does go to redevelop this property, whoever it is, it's there, and it's something to deal with, and how do we document that? So that's one example of what we talked about. We were actually measuring locations of where those pipes terminate in the slab, and we're going to record those dimensions and include that in our report. So it'll be sealed up for now, but at that time that somebody goes back to work with this again, they can locate that, they could cable it and electrify it and utility locate that, so that they could isolate that from the removal of the rest of the slab to help not only minimize cost, but minimize potential for exposure when people come in contact with that. And we'll document the other things, like the encapsulation of the slab that was previously the dry cleaner. That's never been tested. We don't know the environmental content of any type of spills or things that may have occurred in there in the past. So that will be protected for now, but that'll be documented also, that location, so that in the future when this is dealt with, is properly characterized and handled. And similarly with any other areas of where there could be some type of a surface leveling material, other aspects of what remains at the site as well.
Sorry. So with asbestos, I don't know a lot about, like if there's different types or if there's different, so they're going to know, at least with that pipe, what version that is and what type it is. I don't know if it's all uniquely the same or if there's something that they would need to know that's specific to that type of asbestos to know it's this type that's here for that particular thing. Is there a way of documenting that or not?
We will document that also. Yeah, and that's an important point also, because there are different types of asbestos mineral that's used in different building materials. And depending on the type of material, and the term is how friable it can become, is usually the metric for how it needs to be dealt with. And so friability is asbestos's potential to become airborne, and that's inherently the hazard. So different types of material need to be handled certain ways because of that. And this is an example of one, even though it is encased somewhat in the concrete slab. If you did not isolate that pipe in the slab, and let's just say, for example, a contractor came in with heavy machinery and started demolishing the slab, you would damage that pipe and you would have the potential to make that friable. So it will be important to locate that again in the future, and that's why we're taking these steps now to document that in the report.
Or if it's okay. So the only last, you've done a lot of work documenting the air quality. And so I would think that also in this moment in time should be something that should be documented in a way that says during this time period, this project was happening. This is what because again, I'm always thinking like long-term. What's the long-term future? When things happen to people, it's usually not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to be long-term. So, and people change, the people who are involved. I mean, we don't know, it could be 10 years, it could be 20 years, it could be whatever. If somebody documented this earlier, we wouldn't have had to spend so much to know where things are. So how do we make sure that everything that's been done on behalf of our residents, like those numbers, do they stay, Jason, with you? Like, how do we make sure they don't disappear, they don't know, so that everybody, we're responsible for making sure that the community has a long-term history of everything that happens, so that we get things from people, we do what we need to do, and then we hand it off so that the community always knows as best they can what's happened. So like I'm thinking, Attorney Winters, you keep meticulous records because you've been here a long time. So I want that kind of historical record so that it's always available for the future.
I can help out with the answer. What we intend to do when this project is quote-unquote closed out, there'll be another court hearing where we will have to present to the court the basis for the money judgment. And it may require actual testimony from Heinrich as well as from Jason. And once the money judgment itself has been prepared and entered, it's our intent to also record with the Washtenaw County Register of Deeds all of these closure reports. There may be more than one. Air quality is example, the asbestos. So the best way of trying to record those in perpetuity, so to speak, would be to actually have them with the Register of Deeds. That would, in theory, not in theory, but in actuality, would put everyone on notice down the road if ever someone came along and wanted to make an offer on the property. They would be able to look at all the documents, and with their eyes wide open, they would know what actually happened in 2023 with the demolition, the air quality reports, the asbestos removal, and it could be quite a comprehensive report. I'm not really sure how many pages that's going to be, but it'll be in a format that we can record with the Register of Deeds. And of course, the township has its own record storage capabilities. I have my little Dropbox, but I may not be around 40 years to dig it out. But we can and will get it recorded with the Register of Deeds.
And with the building department, the assessing department, it'll be attached to all our records here. But what's amazing to me is they demolished Kmart and we have nothing.
Yeah.
And we have nothing, and,
Yeah, it's unfortunately very common
That's what you said previously, so.
reports to just
Like
disappear.
Debbie said, everyone's done a great job, and I'm really proud that we care so much about the environment and how people can be affected by a construction or deconstruction of a site. And I don't like the amendment either, but I'm glad that a company didn't try to hide it. That is what makes me feel better about the whole process. And the redevelopment, brownfield dollars, phase 1, we tried to do 8 years ago to get them to do this. So we can continue, whoever owns it, let's work towards making that happen. And I think that'll go a long ways, and then they'll have to do other things as well, but, so thank you. Any other questions or comments?
More comment for the board. So, and this isn't for you, Jason.
Okay.
It's for the other Jason, kind of. And I appreciate everything that's been done to communicate to everyone. So I think as we move into the next phase, when it finishes up, we need another communication to the neighborhood for sure, and maybe larger than that to the township that just says, this is what happened, here's what we followed, and clear up all the rumors that are circulating out there about what, I just think we cannot underestimate the power of misinformation when it circulates in our community and causes chaos and harm, and anything we can do to make sure that we give a little report is really helpful. So like even something that in general says like, we did it, here's how we tracked the data, whatever. I just feel like people really need to know, here's what happened, here's what we did, and here's what the future looks like. We don't own the property, just spell all that out. So that's more to my board members with your help, Jason, okay?
Absolutely. Yep, I'm happy to take direction on how you want that put together. Thank you. You're welcome.
Or leadership.
Well, you've done so great so far, so.
All right, thank you.
Do
I
you
know you
have
had to
any other
leave for your
questions
conference.
about,
Oh, Ryan, I'm sorry, do you have a question, sir?
I've kind of lost my train of thought now, but I guess my question was to the effect of, I think this is, I think Trustee Swanson has done a fabulous job of asking questions tonight. So I guess my question centered really around, are we confident that we have inspected enough now to feel like this is going to be the last time these type of issues come back to us? Because it just seems like this has come up a few times now. And I want to be sure that we have done a adequate job of researching any risk to the community, and that we're now kind of in a stable and settled place. Forgive my naive wording on this, but I'm just want to be sure this is settled.
No, that's a good question. I think at this point, all of the asbestos abatement is finished. Really, the remaining items are the hauling of the debris that's left from the actual building itself. There's some other materials that have been sorted into scrap metal piles. There's some utilities that still need to be stubbed off. There's a truck well that still needs to be filled in with gravel or aggregate in order to make it so that it's level with the rest of the ground. There's some other punch list items. Jason, I know you just did a punch list walkthrough with Percy on Friday, so maybe you can.
Sure.
But it's all covered in the contract, correct?
It is. So.
Okay, so we're done.
Yeah, I had to kind of fall on the sword a little bit with presentation of this change order number 2. But again, because of the mechanism of how that was exposed under the self-leveling material. But yes, like Jason mentioned, the asbestos abatement is 100% complete. We've performed air monitoring throughout the project and we're below the criteria that we set for air monitoring for the project, which was, I think, perhaps I described that before, but it was a very, very conservative metric for, a commercial ambient project. But, so all of our documentation to date looks very favorable, collected air sampling results between the project site and the residences as a mechanism to document that those air quality levels between the work and somebody's property were below that criteria. Therefore, on their property, it's also below that criteria. So all of that has been successfully accomplished. And as Jason mentioned, at this stage, we're really just working through final punch list items for the project. And that's cleaning up of now scrap steel and removing that from the property, removing the billboard signage that runs along the service drive as we included that, filling truck wells that were behind the building to grade so that's safe, brushing the surface of the remaining slab so that it's aesthetically as pleasing as we can leave it, as possible. And then there is some utility work that's left per Yucca's instruction, bulkheading a sewer and removing some fire hydrants. But at this phase, I think everything that's left is very visible in front of us.
Thank you. Next time.
Sorry, so now I'm wondering, I'm sorry, but with Yucca, if they want a sewer removed, is that all going to be part of people knowing where it is so that you don't want anybody to come in there and not know where those things are?
Yeah, so that's just.
Hydrants, that kind of thing?
Yes, one sewer that is, as I understand from Yucca, is specific to this development only.
Okay.
And it's.
Cat.
One is essentially bulkheading one sewer conduit within a manhole that's located just inside the neighborhood in the cul-de-sac. So the remainder of that manhole and the functioning of the rest of the sewer will function just like it is. This eliminates that the sewer connection from that property. So if something were to somehow drain into there, it can't flow into the rest of the sewer and cause future problems, is my understanding.
And to your question, Homrich is relying on YCUA's as-built drawings that located all of these utilities in the field for them. So they're all documented as to where the locations are at based on YCUA's records.
The DTE gas lines were also addressed
All of the utility
on the
cutoffs
property.
were required, at the time that they were issued the demolition permit by our building department.
Yeah, and we've been working with Homrich to work in conjunction with Yucca for this. So we've had site meetings, and Jason mentioned identified these locations on the prints and had site observations and validation by Yucca as all of the various service lines to the building were cut and capped, that was done to their satisfaction.
Awesome. All right, thank you.
If you have any questions, there were 3 memos from our office, and I don't want to miss your questions. If there were questions regarding the pay order for Homrich.
Yeah,
which
Jason will
is-
be at the regular meeting, right?
He will, and then there was just the follow-up from SME is regarding their change order as well, but I'm happy to answer any questions additional questions that you might have for me, but Mr. Lafayette will be available,
Okay.
I believe, for the regular meeting as well.
Kind of let you go in front and,
I appreciate it.
is there, okay. Thank you. If we could, we have a grant update from Beth Ernett and John Hine, or maybe just Beth. Thank you so much, Jason.
You're welcome
and
very
Jason.
much. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry for the delay.
No. Good evening. Next time, no cuts. So we did want to come here tonight. There's several grants in motion and several things that we've been working on for the past couple months that I wanted to provide an update. So with me tonight, I have Rob Wagner from Midwestern Consulting. And they did finish up recently the survey of the Lake Loop, which is kind of a huge accomplishment and something that the township will have for a long time. So I want to give Rob the opportunity to go through that and then kind of go through the grant sheet real quickly afterwards.
So just go through the survey first?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
North
then
North Bay Park too?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll come up with it after the survey.
Thank you, Lisa.
So you're gonna have to look up there, and you can see the tabs are open at the top.
Yep, I got it.
The
Okay.
mouse is already over there.
Thank you for having me. I'm just looking at your setup, so you're seeing what's on my screen, so let me go down. I've lost my mouse, there it is.
So look up, it's on the screen.
Yep.
You see. 'Cause you're
Okay,
gonna-
so I'm not looking at your
Exactly, you're
computer.
gonna be looking up there.
Okay, perfect.
And so like these, the tabs are open up there, you gotta.
Okay. So the township hired, through Beth's connection, hired Midwestern Consulting to survey the gaps around the Ford Lake. So this is all available. I assume you all know how to read surveys, so I don't want to go through this in too much detail, but did want you to know there's 17 sheets of survey information. This particular one, the first sheet, is the stretch of existing pathway going through North Bay Park, the real steep one that you go down to get to that boardwalk. And then let's see. And we have a key, so when you get this digitally and want to go through it, we have a key and we go counterclockwise around the lake. And so then you're seeing kind of the next stretch down South Huron. Keep on going down to the intersection. We're getting close to where we are right now. So then we go down Huron River Drive, and I'll just kind of keep scrolling because, like I said, this is all available for your use and for our use, should you have us to kind of look at routing or connecting, the township to the parks further. So this is just about 100% done with the surveys of all the gaps here. And then there's Bridge Street right there. And then I have a bunch of tabs to show you, but I see you do have quite an agenda going through. So then we did an aerial survey of your entire, kind of the route, your existing pathways and gaps. So this doesn't look like too much to you right now, but if you zoomed in, you'd see digital photo, very precise and clear. And in my own computer, I can use a mouse and kind of scroll in a lot better. But this is available for us for planning, or for the township. It's available to kind of play with that and look at gaps that you might want to fill in. Then this was just kind of what we started with. These are what the gaps were that we found before we started surveying. And then with the drone, this is kind of cool. And I don't need to show the whole thing. I'm seeing it on my computer. Okay, right there? Okay, here we go. So, there maybe? No?
Yes.
Oh, so I'm seeing it on my computer.
Yeah. Just slide it over.
So basically what this is on South Huron River Drive. Just we thought it would be a good way to show the township what we gathered by the drone footage. Well, there we go. And you can pause this, you can stop, you can zoom down, and basically all the 2D features. We can actually analyze the existing pathways, the conditions of them, and just something for, the township and for ERNAC Consulting, Beth, and for us to use should you decide to go further with kind of a site analysis and schematic design with filling in the gaps and connecting the communities. So this would be available for your use as well. So I don't have to go through that's about a 2-minute video, so I can you get the gist of it. I can pause it there.
Thank you.
Now, Lisa,
Minimize it up in the corner.
I'll minimize it, okay.
And then it should go
Thank
back
you
to
very
your- yeah,
much.
there you go.
And then, I think we were kind of done talking about the survey, right?
Yeah, stay up here with me.
Okay.
You want to pull up the survey for North Bay?
Yep,
Or whatever you
yeah, for the photos for North Bay, let's see.
So,
Okay, yeah, so, you want to talk, or?
yeah, let me give you
Okay.
1 second here. So
Did you go to the
coincident-
microphone? Sorry.
No, I get it. Coincidentally, we were looking at North Bay Park because North Bay needs to replace the restrooms and also needs to replace the boardwalk. But in the meantime, we've become aware that the path, the actual boardwalk path, is in very poor deteriorating condition, and that needs to be addressed immediately. So the original, without replacing the path, we intended to take that to the trust fund, DNR trust fund, and just apply for the restroom and the extension to get all the way to the boardwalk. But after evaluation, we need to pause, pump the brakes, and now we need to bring that funding to replacing the boardwalk. So that needs to be addressed before we can go any further. Boardwalk path replacements are not covered by trust fund, so we're going to have to look into next year's budget to get the funds in place to do that. So the recommendation, the reason I'm bringing this up with Rob here tonight, is that we should take the existing survey work, and Rob's going to provide us a proposal, Midwestern's going to provide us a proposal, because in replacing that, we are going to have to address the ADA issues. So we can't replace as is. We're going to have to address ADA in terms of what's required for multi-use paths. So,
Yep. And I think what you were talking about is, this is in, I noticed it's in your packet, so you've probably, oh, that's not it. Yeah, all these photos, like Beth was saying, of the boardwalk are all in here, and the recommendations that we had Stantec Architecture put this report together and kind of make those recommendations, which I think you're looking to get that, those
and
grant
that gave-
opportunities for.
that gave us, the recommendations we received gave us the basis for knowing what the cost for replacement's going to be. But we do need to do the engineering as well as that boardwalk is replaced. So without, and I think Mr. Winters could attest to this, but you can't replace without addressing ADA and accessibility issues. Otherwise, that opens up a different can of worms.
So,
Well, and we would want to do that, yeah,
Absolutely, but it's more,
required.
right, I'm just trying to head off the question of, can't we just board for board replace it? And no, we can't. We're gonna have to take a look at the slopes and, basically how it moves. Help me out here. The
steep-
ramps.
oh, the steep slopes, just
Yes.
make sure it's ADA compliant.
Yeah, so we have about a quarter of the information we need. We have the basis to take this forward and get this prepared to start a spring project. So what we need to do, and by we, I mean you, next step is going to be funding that.
What about border to border? Because it's the city and the township and,
Right, so Mr. Hines and I, we did go to the county to talk about this specifically. They have no interest in funding replacement updates or upgrades. They only want to fund new pathways. So we do have a section of new pathway, but that we can get funding for.
okay.
and that'll be the section from the park and ride to the boardwalk. But outside of that, we have not found any funding source, and we will be hard pressed, to be candid about it, we will be hard pressed to find any funding to bring it up to code. Just not what folks want to fund. It's not flashy enough.
Trustee Newman? Trustee Newman just had one. That's okay, honey, yeah.
Do you have a rough estimate about what kind of funds we're looking at?
Yeah, we're looking at about 250,000.
For the total replacement? I guess my question is, why wouldn't why couldn't we tear everything up and just replace it with new if the county is only interested in replacing new?
I believe Supervisor Stembo asked me the same question, because that averts the purpose of what they're doing. So, and to further answer that question, there are several bridges throughout. The structures are stable. Those are very expensive. So we'll be replacing the top and the angles, but we won't be replacing the bridge structure, which is in wetland, which opens up another can of worms with Eagle. So sometimes we have to leave good enough alone. Nope, absolutely.
Trustee Swanson?
So the boardwalk itself, that may be the part that's in the roughest shape, but it in itself, the whole thing is pretty rough in different spots. I mean, maybe not, it has to be replaced. So my question is, the time it was built, it was beautifully done. Wood near water, probably not a good idea. In my opinion, not as a construction person, but I'm thinking we probably need to shift to like the plastic timber, because if you go to other places where it's warm, where there's water, a lot of theirs are not done with wood. So that's a little concerning, because if we have to start with wood because we have wood, I mean, things change, like things get better over time. And again, back to the last comment that I made with the last presentation, I am all about what we do and doing it in a way that it creates legacy, it creates community infrastructure, that's generational wealth for our community. So anything that we're doing, I'm always thinking, like even the bathrooms have come a long way. If you go out and you look at public restrooms and like parks and other places, like they put a lot of it's all stainless steel, so they can just go in there, they can spray it all down, it's easy to clean, the drains are there. And so what I don't want is for us to be at the front end of doing great stuff for the community, because Ypsilanti Township was a forerunner in a lot of stuff. But if you're the forerunner and things are done early, it starts to date itself with materials and other stuff like that. So I guess that's the pickle I'm in, which really I guess isn't a question, but I'm hoping like we have a chance to be looking at what's the best way to do something that's like a now, that isn't you skate where the puck's going, not to where the puck is what somebody told me. That's that kind of thinking. So that part, and then I have one more after that if you want to say something about that.
Do you want to be engineer or do you want me?
You can be engineer.
Okay, I'm going to play engineer for a minute.
Okay.
So 2 ways I want to respond to that. The first is the general, by bringing this project to the forefront, it will go out for bids, and we will ask for the most qualified bids, and those bids may include different options in materials.
Okay.
Secondly, we've had a lot of discussion, and not just through Ypsilanti Township, but I've had a lot of discussion in the last 10 years about Trex versus wood versus other options. And I'm generally using Trex because people usually know that term, but the Trex wood is coming out to be problematic. So the people who are on the forefront of those, there's obviously pros and cons in any situation, but they have we're getting a lot of reports back, and I would say regulatory authorities from granting perspectives are not in favor because it's slippery when wet.
Okay.
It's extremely slippery when wet, and it also builds mold and mildew.
Okay.
So, there's a long-term, yes, the material holds up more, and I'm looking at Rob to see if he has any more knowledge on this.
Well, I did just put a Trex porch in. No, but, yeah, definitely during the design, we would vet out materials, and even in addition to specking out a material, we could give an alternate, and then be ultimately up to the township to decide, what cost to pay for, an alternative material as well.
So when I asked the same question, trustee Swanson.
Okay.
So we were thinking, I asked that, and it was explained to me that this is a natural park, and it's supposed to look more natural. And the only thing I know about Trek is that it's hot.
Yes.
It's like hot
and
to the touch.
slippery.
Yeah, but I like it better. I think it looks better, but like Debbie said, I'm not an expert in any of it. And you also said when it's near water, that womanized wood is the best to have, is what, at the time, because I literally asked the same question, because it made sense to me. So we can look at it.
Yeah, and what we'll do is we will look at it, and we can bring in the suppliers to explain the pros and cons, and, also speak with the state on what they're doing as far as iron bell installations, because I believe they are not promoting going with alternate woods anymore. But we'll bring that all forward if you say, yes, this is where we're going.
Okay, that's good to know. I guess my other point would be probably to the board, not to you guys. Thank you for going to the county to seek help. I appreciate that. To the board, I'm concerned, because again, it's another no. We get a lot of no's. And I guess I don't understand the idea of putting in paths if you aren't also going to advocate on behalf of what happens when the paths need to be replaced. So I guess what we need to do then is say, okay, we can appreciate that you're trying to go in that direction, but I don't know that it's reasonable to expect every municipality to then, we did this, now you're responsible evermore. It's got to be a more collaborative way of doing that, and how we advocate that forward is important to me, because you're going to have a lot of pathways that are going to need to be revisited, and that's hard to have municipalities do that. So whatever we can do, if maybe there are other municipalities who are leaders in voicing that concern, I would think we at least need to as a board. If we feel as a board, I'm feeling like this is an important task on our part. I can't speak for the whole board, but to just say no seems harsh for the purpose of creating a pathway that lasts long into the future for other generations.
Agreed. Any other questions or comments?
Just one more. Do you know how long this would be expected to last? The board.
So I think that's something that we'll have to answer as we're going out to bid. That we're
Okay.
going to have to ask for the supplier to tell us. And that's, do we look at cedar? Do we look at oak? Do we look, there's a lot of options, and that's what suppliers are for, to provide us that information to make the right decision. So I can't answer that
Okay.
for certain, but I can bring someone that will.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you have other things to talk about too?
Yeah.
Okay, so I can close out of this?
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for having Midwestern Consulting, and like I said, all the survey and the drone information is all available electronically.
And this helps us with future grants a lot, to start building the layers and doing preliminary engineering, and we have all that ready to tee up, and maybe someday we can get some from the county. I don't know.
Well, and this does kind of go to Trustee Swanson's point. What you were asking earlier was, legacy and leaving records. So when a survey is completed, that is a long-term record. So the goal of this specific survey is to take it to TAP funding to bridge all the gaps in the trail system around the lake. But there are multiple uses throughout the lifetime of the survey that it can be used for. So I think it's a great investment to have, especially on these valuable properties around the lake.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
All right, I have a couple more updates. Yeah, give that back to Lisa.
Excellent.
Most important one, I want to prioritize these, is there is a federal grant available through the bipartisan infrastructure bill for, and this is probably a one-timer, for hydroelectric dams. So it unfortunately is only a 40% grant, but as Mr. Saarinen has expressed, the importance of the inspection that has to be completed by '24 and the concrete stability updates needed on the dam and the hydro station. So the grant is due on the 6th. It does require that 60% match. At this point, the township's 100% responsible. So submitting opens up the opportunity to negotiate. But I would just like your confidence in getting that submitted by Friday, and I'd like your knowledge. So we'd be asking for approximately $700,000 from DOE, Department of Energy. This is a pretty large grant opportunity and the first time any funding of this sort has been released. So as of now, we're in the running. It is very, very competitive, but
We could, Debbie Dingle and Congresswoman Dingle and Stabenow.
Absolutely. We should make all the reach outs after it's submitted and push to everyone we know. I know that Congresswoman Dingle is on the Energy Committee, so that would be a great reach.
Are you looking for just acknowledgement, Beth?
Yes.
Because we have to formally accept it, right?
Right, you would have to, if an offer were made of the grant, then it would come before the board for formal acceptance. So just looking for acknowledgement that, hey, we're good, yes, let's get it.
So, would we be, you said 700,000 and 40%, 60% we'd have to pay. So are you saying 60% of 700,000 or are you saying 700,000?
No, 700,000 would be the grant award, the maximum grant award.
Okay.
So the project is right around 2.1 million right now.
Okay.
And I think you have about 250,000 budgeted. So this would go a long way to getting this project completed.
So of that amount, we would be responsible for this
1.3.
1.3 million?
Mm-hmm.
And that's our 60% match?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it's 1.5 you'd be responsible for.
And currently, we budgeted 250,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we have ARPA funds too, right?
Okay.
Right, but budgeted for the dam inspection, I believe was.
And the inspection is required
Yes,
by FERC by 2024.
correct.
The other stuff, it's the best time to do it, but I don't know if it's required. And those are the kind of
Right.
things that,
It's a best practice measure that could come up in the next inspection, but at this point it is stable. It's viewed as satisfactory, but this really is possibly a one-time only grant fund, so it's an opportunity.
are the inspections every 10 year?
The licensing is every 30 years. There is an annual inspection. And I know it was just completed in June, and it was marked as satisfactory.
So this is relicensing that we're?
No.
Okay, it's just an annual inspection?
Yeah. But this is, so from the last licensing, there was a memorandum of understanding from the township and FERC that this inspection be completed by 2024.
Okay.
Is there a possibility that we could go through these procedures and not get the grant?
Yes. Always a process, but you wouldn't be expending any funds until you knew whether you were a recipient or not.
So how much would we expend up front before we could find out? And not.
I believe
Yeah.
about 3,500 on my costs.
Just a professional cost of submitting the grant?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's.
And we bid this project out earlier this year, and it came
Right.
in like everything else.
Between 2.1 and like 3.5 million
Way higher than,
anticipated.
so we're going to rebid it
Right.
later this year or January.
Once
And-
we know about the grant, we will rebid it with the scope.
And there may be state grants as well, although they like to remove
Yeah.
dams. Our dam actually produces electricity and it's sold,
Right.
and it's magnificent.
Yeah, it's really awesome, and Eagle is not incredibly supportive, but the Department of Energy is pushing alternative sources, so there's a little bit of push-pull.
And our state reps and state senators, could hopefully help us with it.
Yeah.
Appreciate you making the comments about the dam, because again, it's community infrastructure. It's a community asset. It's very well managed and very well cared for. So these are the hard decisions that have to be made when we're taking care of our community resources. But there's also just a lot of, and I know a lot of people think, tear them out. There are a lot of environmental concerns right now. When you tear them out, it pushes things around. And so I'm not as jump on the bandwagon of tearing them out, because there are unintended consequences when that happens. So I'm more of the take very good care of what you have, so that, because it's also usually cheaper than tearing it out. But again, there's a lot of issues with environmental stuff, sediment, and also
Fish
the
habitats.
PFAS problem. Like right now, there are issues that we're not fully understanding. And so when you start ripping things out and you push it around, I get really nervous about that. So thank you for bringing this up. It's a costly thing that we got to figure out what we're going to do with. And I appreciate you, Madam Supervisor, for making the point that we work really hard, and not we do what we're currently responsible for our terms, but the reason why it's well cared for is because of the legacy decisions of other people. We cannot forget that part, because a lot of other communities, even some that are close by, do not have those legacy decisions that put their community in this kind of a place. So, thank you.
Real quickly, we've resubmitted for the Spark grant. Again, they've had historic amounts of applications, but the Spark grant is for the Ford Lake Bank stabilization.
Lord,
Yeah. So there's two areas of bank that are in critical condition. We've applied for Spark funding for both of those. We were not successful in the first round, but only 10% of those who submitted were successful. So, I don't feel good about it, but it was very, very competitive. Mm-hmm. So second round was submitted in June. We just received an email last week that notification should be made by the end of October. So fingers crossed, toes crossed, whatever. let's pull for that. And then the other one that I want to hit quickly is the EECBG. That's also Department of Energy. That's formulary funding. It's a guaranteed $113,000 for Ypsilanti Township. We've earmarked that through discussion for the HVAC replacements, the rooftop replacements at the community center. The DOE had pushed out the period, but it is finally open as of October 1st. So we will get started as soon as the DOE grant for the dam is in. We will get started on getting that bid out and getting our voucher to plan that work.
Great. Questions or comments? Beth, we appreciate everything you're doing to help the community with the grants, and it's so nice to work with you again.
Absolutely.
Like we have in the past, but greatly appreciated.
Hope to be successful, and parting thoughts is the recycling program, which was a grant that we started with, is completed. So all funds have been dispersed, reimbursed, and everything is up and running. So I know there's always some hiccups, but overall, a great program to get the township, get all residents and two-family homes recycling.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
so Heather, and I hate to jump around on the agenda, but if it's all right with the board, and Beth, just for clarity, we're going to put under other business, if it's okay with the board, to authorize the submission of the DEO grant? DOE.
Department of Energy Hydro Dam.
For 10, did you say 10 for, do I have to say anything else for that? Just put DOE.
DOE Hydro Dam.
Gotcha. And then we have to formally accept any grants anyways, but this just
Right.
authorizes you formally to submit.
To submit on
Gotcha.
behalf of the township by Friday.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I have to step away. If there's any questions, feel free. I don't know if you can call or,
No problem.
but feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Beth.
All right.
So if it's all right with the board, if we could, Ed is here from the county to discuss the tabled item, which is the agreement for election services with Washtenaw County.
Good evening. Nice to see many of you again. I think I've met all of you, and if not, pleasure to meet you. Happy to be here tonight at the request of Clerk Heather Gerald Rowe, and pleased to answer any questions that you might have about the county's offer to enter into early voting services with Ypsilanti Township.
Want to give an overview or?
Sure can. Yeah, I asked earlier if that was the expectation, and was suggested that questions would maybe come rapidly first. So happy to do that. So as you all know, in 2022, in November, voters across the state of Michigan adopted Proposal 2, which dramatically expands access to voting in Michigan and, among other things, provides for actual early voting, unlike the state has had in the past. So what that means is that there's a constitutional guarantee that prior to every major election, state and federal election, every municipality has to have, for 9 days prior to each election day, an opportunity for voters to come in person and cast an early ballot, which would mean actually scanning, tabulating their ballot at that moment. The legislature adopted a framework to provide rules and procedures to allow for early voting to occur. Public Act 81 of 2023 was adopted in late spring, and among other things, allows for 3 methods for jurisdictions to provide early voting to their voters and constituents. Option 1 would be to go and do this independently. Option 2 was a municipal arrangement whereby multiple, at least 2 cities and townships would coordinate together to provide those opportunities to voters. And the third option is a county coordinated agreement. Around the state right now, a lot of our peer counties are pursuing county coordinated early voting agreements, as are we. In the spring, we surveyed all of the municipalities in Washtenaw County to try to gauge interest in methodology here. And we're slightly surprised to find that the majority, I think it was about 18 or 19 jurisdictions at that time, were interested in entering into a county coordinated agreement, among them Ypsilanti Township. We found interest also from other large municipalities like the city of Ypsilanti, Pittsfield Township, Scioto Township, all again, sort of surprising us that they were interested in a coordinated endeavor with us. We expected to enter into coordinated agreements with municipalities, particularly in the more rural portions of the county, areas with very few resources, part-time staff, et cetera. We were pleased to find that we would be able to offer arrangements for all municipalities interested in Washtenaw County to enter into an agreement. So after we took the results of those surveys this spring and again over the summer, formulated some plans and proposals that would allow for every interested municipality to join a county coordinated agreement. And we ended at 23 of the county's 26 municipalities expressing their official interest and intent to join a county coordinated agreement about a month ago or so, again, among them Ypsilanti Township. What we presented to clerks over the summer was our best attempt to serve not only the interest of voters, providing them with service as they expect, given the overwhelming support of Proposal 2, including early voting. We wanted to balance that against the fiscal responsibility that we know municipalities are all interested in as well, and also the state legislature, when it approved the 2024 budget, allocated $30 million with the specific intent to incentivize coordinated arrangements whereby individual municipalities wouldn't be administering early voting themselves unless there was some compelling reason to do so. So we got our directive from the legislature that there was an interest in counties coordinating this on behalf of local units. We do know there are many other counties endeavoring to do the same. Some of our larger peer counties, including Oakland, are providing the same sorts of opportunities that we are. The plan that we developed, again, allows for voters to have access to an early voting site. And what we've been able to do is create a plan whereby each voter in the county entering into this agreement would have two. So the plan, as it relates to Ypsilanti Township, would provide an early vote site here at the Civic Center, as well as a central site serving all 23 municipalities at the Washtenaw County Learning Resource Center, which is at Hogback and Washtenaw, county-owned facility there, fairly central to the county. And we saw opportunity there because there are so many voters in Ypsilanti Township, in Pittsfield Township, in the city of Ypsilanti, but also on the west side of the county, north and south, that do business in that area or work in the Ann Arbor area. So we saw an opportunity, again, to go a little bit further than what the Constitution mandates, which is a single early vote site for each municipality, serving them in some capacity, and offering two to each. We're doing this as cost-effective as we can. We are going to access grant funding provided by the state of Michigan, again, allocated by the legislature specifically for incentivizing these sorts of arrangements that would make the ongoing recurring costs extended to municipalities participating much more affordable than it would be if municipalities were doing this independently. Our best estimate right now, given the state grant application and some basic expectations of funding levels, would be that each municipality would pay somewhere in the neighborhood of $2,000 to $4,000 per election to conduct early voting in this coordinated environment. I'm sure that Clerk Gerald Rowe has already presented some information about budget expectations if the township were to go about this independently of that agreement. We, at this point, have heard back from 21 of the jurisdictions that intend to enter into this agreement, that they have approval. The clerk has approval from their municipal board. The remaining two, Ypsilanti Township and Dexter Township, we are awaiting, and know that Dexter Township will probably approve their agreement in another week and a half when their board next meets. And again, here tonight to answer any questions that you all might have as it relates to early voting services that we would provide specifically to Ypsilanti Township.
Thank you. Ed, questions, board member?
I have questions.
Yes, Mr. Newman?
Sir, so,
Oh, sorry,
whose name did
Gloria.
you call? I'm sorry.
I called the wrong trustee. I'm sorry. Trustee Peterson.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Sir, how many days prior, did you say 9 days? I
Yeah,
thought you said
so
9 days. I'm
early-
sorry, I have allergy problems.
Yes, early voting is required during state and federal elections for 9 full days, beginning on the second Saturday prior to each election and ending on the Sunday immediately
So
preceding.
you will assist this township with the vote, where would the voting take place? Would it be at the Civic Center or another location?
Early voting, the early voting site that would serve Ypsilanti Township and Augusta Township would be here at the Civic Center. And there's an additional option at the Washtenaw County Learning Resource Center that Ypsilanti Township voters and all other voters in the 23 participating municipalities, should all 23 participate, could access. So 2 sites, basically.
This site and the one at,
LRC, the Learning Resource Center.
also, this is the issue for me, and I guess across the states, when states do early voting, all the votes haven't even came in. And somehow, whoever's running the election, they want to call election. President race, governor's race, whoever race, the early voting process, some of the people haven't even voted, maybe in the state of California, and they'll call election. And that kind of bothers me when everybody has a vote. It kind of intimidates people from going to the polls at that point. I don't know. That's how I see things. How would the county, our county, not you, your county, the process be with that nine-day prior voting policy as far as the completion of every vote coming in?
Yes.
I guess that's my question.
So by provision in the Constitution, as amended, and statute, it is illegal for votes to be disseminated prior to, or vote tallies and reports to be disseminated prior to the close of the polls on Election Day. So what that means is that early vote sites, not just in Washtenaw County, but everywhere in the state, are required to suspend from day to day during those 9 full days and not prepare any detailed vote totals. So you will not see, poll workers will not see a report on each night of early voting that says this is how many votes were cast for any of the candidates or proposals on the ballot. That cannot be created. Those reports cannot be created by law until 8 p.m. on Tuesday, Election Day Tuesday, when the polls have officially closed across the state.
You answered my question. Thank you.
Question, Mr. Treasurer Elder? Oh, Debbie. Sorry.
Yeah, I guess some more.
Part of the agreement, just glancing over some of the information that was provided, is Washtenaw County will provide the workers, and if once they provide the workers, do we have to, as a township, have to pay for those workers through an invoice?
So what we anticipate right now is that election inspectors, poll workers, will apply directly to the county clerk's office, and the election commission of the county, and this is required by law, we don't really have options here, the election commission would make the appointments, very much like the township election commission does currently for poll workers that are assigned to work at election day voting precincts and in the absent voter count board that you operate. So we would receive applications at the county clerk's office. The basically the same sorts of applications. Poll workers in early vote sites have to meet the same qualifications that poll workers do in any other environment. They have to declare party affiliation by law, and then the election commission of the county would make appointments from that list of recruits. We would be asking for assistance from participating municipalities to help essentially push poll workers to the county so that we could deploy them to early vote sites. We know, there's a finite supply of poll workers across the county. We are fortunately in a position, or have been in a position in the past whereby, we have had a lot of interest from folks. It's not quite the same challenge that some other counties have, but we will still need the assistance of participating municipalities to suggest poll workers that could be hired for this purpose and appointed by the Washtenaw County Election Commission.
So would they go through not you, but the county first, or would they come through the township first and then go to the county and then come back to us?
They would be officially hired and appointed by the county and be assigned to an early vote site here or elsewhere. There's, and I didn't mention this earlier, but there are 6 sites, including that one central site. So 5 regional sites, one of which happens to be here or would be here at the Civic Center, and would be appointed by the County Election Commission to be assigned to one of them. So you would be, and to get to your second question, the township would be billed for actual costs for poll worker labor during each non-reimbursable election next year, and that would be August and November. The presidential primary is a reimbursable election, and it is expected to be paid for by the legislature that is calling it. But for August and November, actual costs for poll worker labor not reimbursed by grant funding provided by the state would be extended back to the participating municipalities and shared equally among the 23, assuming that there are 23 in the agreement.
So then we'll be dependent upon who the county selects to be our poll workers, so to speak. So I guess my question is, if we're paying for the workers, the only thing the county is providing is the equipment?
The coordination, administration, including the logistics around it, the hiring, scheduling, and training of the poll workers themselves over the 9 full days, and the logic and accuracy testing of the equipment itself. Yes, that's what you would be receiving as a benefit, to this, saving the clerk's office here from those tasks. And again, the incentivization that the legislature has put forward here, the grant funding available is expected to offset in large degree the poll worker labor that would otherwise be extended back to the participating municipalities.
So is this new equipment being used?
Yes, yep.
So it really hasn't been tested out yet?
It would be the same equipment that's being used in the county, the same certified equipment from the vendor that the Washtenaw County Clerk's Office has already selected and uses across the county and has since 2017. It would be new equipment purchased with the specific purpose of being used in early vote sites, subject to acceptance testing. And again, this is already pre-certified equipment provided through a contract that the state of Michigan has already entered into with Hart Intercivic, who was the voting equipment vendor here in Washtenaw County, and 2 other vendors used elsewhere in the state.
Okay, one more question. So at the end of every day of those 9 days, the equipment goes to the precinct it's at, the 6 places. So for instance, if it's here, then the equipment would be stored here.
Correct. Yes, and it must be it must be stored in a secure location, and we would be purchasing secure equipment to store the equipment in, and also asking for a dedicated space, ideally, where we can store certain pieces of equipment, including the ballot tabulator, ballot containers, blank ballots, et cetera.
Oh, okay. Just an observation. So we have voting equipment already. Is that correct? Okay. All right. Thanks.
Madam Chair?
Wait, if I could.
Yes. Oh, I didn't see.
Treasurer Eldridge was right, and then Trustee Swanson, I think? Or,
Ed,
sorry.
I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to defer to the residents first. So, yeah, I'll defer to them because I have a lot of questions that may get answered when others speak.
My name is Karen Holman. I live in the township, and I have a couple of questions which I think Ed and also Heather can answer. One is the total cost savings to the township, which benefits I would see as several $1,000s. Another benefit to the township would be there would be 2 places for early voting, whereas if the township took up the whole cost themselves, which they would have to do, according to law, there would, I think, only be 1 place. Another thing is, I would believe the county would be responsible for the widespread voter education and information on the new voting rules and where the early voting would take place. It'd be, and they would take care of that. And the other thing is, if the township were to take this on, the early voting themselves, it would also cost, I think, in man hours, a lot of effort for, coordination and figuring out the facilities and the logistics, a lot of effort for the clerk's office. So I just wanted to ask those questions and put it forward. It seems like it's really a benefit. The township would get an extra voting place. It would cost less, and there'd be a wider dissemination of voter information. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what do you estimate the township would save? Because there's money from the legislature to support this effort. Thanks.
Thank you. I don't know.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would just say it's a little bit hard to give an accurate estimate because we don't really know how busy these sites are going to be. So I had given a ballpark estimate to our board prior to this, somewhere between 10 and 20,000. Again, depending on the election, if it's a presidential primary, or governor's race, we don't see quite as much turnout. So that's about how much it would cost us, I think, if we did it on our own. And then if you offsetted that from Ed's rough ballpark estimate between 2,000 and 4,000, anywhere between, then you'd be saving anywhere between 6,000 and 16,000. So I think I answered all your questions. And then the piece about it would help us, as many clerks are interested in doing this, it helps disseminate the same information to all people. So there is no space for misinformation or oddly worded election things circulating, because we have enough of that and we'd like to minimize that. If you have anything else to add, Ed.
I think that's well said.
Thank you. Stan, did you have a question?
I did want to follow that before the next resident. So if I heard right, an election would cost us between 10 and 20,000, depending on the election, for the early voting. Ed, I thought I heard you say earlier that we might save 2,000 to 4,000.
I think it'll probably cost the jurisdiction $2,000 to $4,000.
It would cost us that much. So taking those two together, we could save roughly 15,000, 16,000, if that's what I'm hearing. Okay. Does that include the cost that then we would be responsible for all the workers?
It does, and it's mainly that cost.
Okay. All right. I just.
Okay, so first things first, I saw the agreement, which is disturbing in itself because it seems as if the county is attempting to take over election services for the entire county. If I have it correct, it's Ann Arbor, Augusta, Chelsea, Dexter Township, Freedom Township, Lima, Lodi, Lyden, Manchester, Northfield, Pittsfield, Salem, Saline, and Saline Township, Silo, also basically Sharon, Charter Township of Superior, Sylvanian Township, Webster Township, York, City of Ypsilanti, and Ypsilanti Township. The only thing that's missing there is the City of Ann Arbor. So that's disturbing in itself. According to the the titles of the various full-time officials, including that of clerk. One of their titles inside the municipal law of the state of Michigan includes the administration of elections, which is why basically clerks are elected inside of townships. And this is a charter township. It's a little bit different from maybe one of the general law townships, like, for instance, Lyon. So that's something I wanted to point out. Secondly is, I guess I'm confused on what it is that is trying to be done here. There's 9 days of early voting. Ypsilanti Township has already provided early voting and absentee voting. Now, meanwhile, between time, the next question is, oh, well, it'll be an additional voting center. Well, that can be done as well, I guess. Why would that not be able to be done in a township? As a person that experienced some shenanigans, to say the very least, with the county not reviewing my affidavit identity that was sitting for 4 months, 4 months, and might as well say 2 weeks, and not finding out until that affidavit of identity had an error until 2 days after the election at a meeting that I was not at, mind you, where the clerk of this county basically told someone, oh, she has an error in her affidavit identity. And that did happen. Yes, I would be concerned as a township resident of having the county overtake the elections inside of Ypsilanti Township. First of all, it is our duty as a township to administer elections. I would suggest that the county or the state of Michigan, please go look at the municipality law for charter townships. That's number one. Now, if the question is, oh, well, you want to provide some assistance, well, okay, maybe that could be done. But just the takeover of elections, it is highly disturbing to me. And it's also highly disturbing that pretty much every charter and general law township is included in this when they have different laws under the state of Michigan. So, I mean, I would ask the board to literally do some digging in regards to what does it say inside of Michigan Charter Township laws as in regards to the clerk, it's just the position of clerk, administering elections inside of a charter township. I would really ask for the board to do some digging. It's bigger than just saving money. It's also about making sure that the law is followed.
Thank you. And did you give your name for the record? Thank you. I'm sorry. Stan? We're going to, our board members has a lot of questions. I'm sorry, and we'll talk about it again at 7. Mr. Eldridge.
And I apologize in advance if these are silly questions, but I've tried to read through this a few times, and I'm looking, do you have the contract with you there?
I do,
Okay.
yes.
I'm looking at section 5.1. I'm guessing you'll be the QVF controller based on your position currently?
Yes, for early voting purposes only.
So So when you set up all of these regions, user access, application access, is there involvement from the local clerks as well, or is that something that's unilaterally done at the county level?
So right now, QVF changes are still in development that will allow for municipal and county agreements to be affected. We would have access to essentially assign voters to particular early vote sites. And otherwise, our access would be as it is now, which is for the most part read-only. We do have access as it is to see all of Ypsilanti Township's voters within the qualified voter file, generate reports, and that's the same for all municipalities in the county. We would, again, have the added ability to assign voters to the early vote sites, perhaps some other ballot administration functions, but as yet undefined by the Michigan Bureau of Elections.
Okay. When it comes to setting up these early voting sites, again, same kind of a question. That's done unilaterally. I'm looking at 6.1, where the approval of early voting sites. I only ask this, I guess it really doesn't pertain to our community, but I think I saw one township to the north has to come across 2 or 3 jurisdictional lines for their residents to vote. Is that correct?
That's correct,
Okay.
yeah. The Washtenaw County Election Commission moving forward in coordination and consultation with each participating municipality will set early vote sites.
Okay. And I've heard that mentioned a couple times tonight, the Elections Commission.
Correct.
I know we have one here, and I think along with the clerk, there's a couple board members a part of that. How does one become a member of the County Election Commission?
Those roles are defined by statute, so it is limited to the chief judge of the probate court, the county clerk register, and the county treasurer.
Okay. I'm trying to go down my list quickly here. Again, I guess it's 7.1, the appointment of inspectors. I think maybe Trustee Newman asked a similar question. Those selection of inspectors and/or workers at the sites will be done through the county?
Correct.
Okay. The townships have no say in who those people would be in their own jurisdictions.
We will, again, consult, and we really like it if participating jurisdictions provided, or suggested to their excellent poll workers that we know they all have to participate in this. But we would be vetting at the county and through the election commission, subject to the rules and laws of the state related to poll worker appointments.
And in section 8, it's 8.1.2. It talks about dates and hours beyond the dates and hours guaranteed. What does that mean? I've read it a couple times and I just can't figure it out.
So what that would mean is if there were to be additional hours beyond the or days and hours beyond the constitutionally mandated 9 days. So for instance, we're not proposing this, but if in the future we said, let's go to 10 days or 11 or 12 days prior to the election, that's what that would be contemplating.
Okay. I'm at 10.1. I'm just trying to remember what my question was there. I think we've talked about it, what our costs would be. We would be responsible for the paying of election workers, and I'm guessing that would include the site supervisors as well.
Yeah, site supervisors are expected to be drawn mostly from the ranks of participating clerks and their deputies. So, this will be one opportunity where we'd be asking the Ypsilanti Township clerk and staff to potentially participate. There may not be a need to pay for those services. It'll be dependent on the position of the individual and what local policies are in effect that might prevent them being paid, I guess, for their services as a site supervisor.
Okay. And I guess being here 20 years, I've become a little bit notorious about asking on numbers. So in 10.2, it's an estimated budget for the recurring expenses.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a lot of discussion about contracts and numbers over the last couple months here, so I'm just trying to figure out how you arrive at those numbers. And I'm not asking for great detail, I guess, but just when I see 100,000, a little over 100,000 for poll worker EV site daily labor at a high and a low of 72, how did we come up with a range like that?
So basically calculating the number of poll workers we think are going to be needed at each site. And I think on the low range, we're talking more about the August state primary, and the high end more so the November general election. We have used as a basis for cost the expectation that we'll probably pay poll workers somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 an hour, that will need between 6 and up to 12 poll workers at each site, depending on how many voters they might be serving. This is a larger site. This and the site that would be operating at Pittsfield Township are the two largest, serving 52 or so thousand voters at each. So more poll workers needed at certain sites versus that site that you mentioned earlier, where voters are traveling in some cases from Manchester Township up to the Chelsea area to access. There's really only about 20,000 voters in that region of the county, and less poll workers would be necessary there. So again, roughly $20 an hour multiplied by the number of poll workers that we expect to need between 6 and 12 across the 9 full days of early voting, and 10 hours per day, given that we have to be open for 8 hours and need to allow for some time to open and close each site.
Okay. And so those costs that would not be covered by the money from the state, that total that would be countywide, that's divided up by every municipality in it? Or let's say a site to the west maybe only has 4 or 5 workers and we have 10 or 12. Would we bear the cost, the full cost of the 10 or 12, or would that be added into the group and everybody pays an equal share?
Yes, we propose that the shares be paid equally, regardless of the size of the jurisdiction. And that is to solve some problems of scale. If we were, and we certainly explored it in depth, the possibility of charging back costs proportionally based on the number of registered voters within each municipality. And what we found was it would be cost prohibitive for certain municipalities, including Ypsilanti Township, to go about that if we were to do that, which is contrary to the incentivization grant. And we decided, what we are offering is less than what any municipality would pay conducting early voting independently, essentially. So every municipality gains from the coordination.
Okay. I'll skip the one in section 14 for the moment. 18.2, there's no termination date on the contract. Most contracts, that, at least since I've been here, have always had an end date to them. It's kind of been something that's been hammered into our head by the person at the far left. Oh, he's not here. Now I'll really talk. Is there a reason that there's no termination date?
So this is an unusual sort of agreement that is provided, the form and structure, contents are largely dictated by state law, and Public Act 81 of 2023 being that law, which allows for 2 options. One would be a term ending, the soonest term ending date, essentially based on how withdrawal might work, is the conclusion of 2025. Or the agreement can continue on into perpetuity absent any modifications. So the agreement does provide for a process to modify it, and it does provide a means to withdraw from it. Both of those are essentially also set by statute, especially as it relates to withdrawal. Those terms are exactly what statute requires.
And that's what I was going to ask you. 19.3 talks about that withdrawal and how the clerk of the municipality that's withdrawing would have to submit a revised early voting plan, says to the department. I'm guessing that would be to the county clerk's office. So let's just for the moment surmise that we do not enter into this. Then we could set up our own early voting based on state laws and everything. Should we enter in and then subsequently withdraw at some point? Before we could do that, we would have to then submit a plan to the county clerk's office that would have to be approved before we could withdraw?
What you would have to do at the point of withdrawal, upon withdrawing from the agreement, is to file an early voting plan. The conduit is the county clerk registrar's office. The end destination is the Michigan Bureau of Elections and Secretary of State's office. By law, they have to have county's confirmation that each municipality has an early vote plan that meets the basic requirements of state law. And that's what we would be reviewing to ensure that that also includes the 3 municipalities right now that are not entering into this plan. The county received their early vote plans to ensure that it met those state minimums for provisions for 9 full days, 8 hours a day, a set number, starting and closing schedule, et cetera, and then confirmed those plans with the Bureau of Elections.
And I apologize, but I didn't see anything about the state of Michigan's Bureau of Elections in here, so. I did ask a question of the clerk and her deputy yesterday. If a resident, let's say 5 residents from 5 different municipalities were to go to the LRC and vote, or take it a step further, I think you said there's 23 that could be involved in this. Would all 23 municipalities have an individual tabulator at the LRC
No. There will be a certain number of ballot tabulators capable of processing ballots from each individual city or township in the participating agreement. Similar to arrangements right now, when the township consolidates voting precincts, or in the absent voter count board environment when multiple precincts are being processed on the same piece of equipment, but reporting is made so that it's divided by each municipality and subsequently by precinct as well. So there would be, for instance, at the central site, the LRC, 5 ballot tabulators that would serve all of the 23 municipalities within the county that are participating.
Okay. I thought that each tabulator had to be set up with specific issues or candidates, and how do they cross jurisdictional lines?
That's true. However, Public Act 81 provides other and more efficient processes or infrastructure around that particular point, given the fact that the goal, again, is to reduce the overall volume of equipment that would be involved. So just like every election, logic and accuracy testing will be conducted on every piece of equipment that's deployed for early voting, just as it's done for election day voting and in absentee voter count boards. That ensures that votes cast on ballots are properly recorded and reported under the right headings, either jurisdiction and precinct headings, so that we can be sure that those pieces of equipment are processing ballots correctly. But again, because early voting, there's essentially a brand new, set of instructions and rules in Michigan to allow for early voting to come into effect, and specifically related to coordinated agreements, ballot tabulators can process ballots from multiple jurisdictions, just the same way that, if the township were to administer early voting independently, a single piece of equipment would be probably used to process all precincts within the jurisdiction at the early vote site.
Okay. And then I guess maybe my final one would be, I noticed the county clerk is mentioned in a lot of these things here, but when I get to the very bottom of the contract, he's not a signator. You are, and the county administrator.
The county clerk has to execute the agreement. It's within the signatures where the township clerks and cities are signing.
Okay. Thank you, Ed.
You're welcome.
All right, next was Ryan.
Well, I think we can go to that end. I think they've waited, so.
Well,
Trustee Hunter.
Are you passing the shoe, or? Okay. Well, Mr. Newman, I will defer to seniority, sir.
Trustee Hunter.
All right, thank you.
You have the floor.
Okay, just showing respect. Okay, so I don't know if this will be necessarily a dialogue. I do have just comments, that I'm just going to deliver. And firstly, let me just say thank you for your presentation and explanation. That said, I do have concerns. I think one of our residents raised a number of questions about the process here that resonated with me. And I look at things and I say, this just kind of sounds like potentially the death of 1,000 cuts. It's kind of the way I'm seeing it right now. And I'm hearing words that don't settle me. Words like, and I said this last time, and I'll repeat it again, words like should, ought, theoretically, and unusual. And if there's ever an election in which our process should be 100% secure, it is the upcoming election. Just because there was I don't want to play the rerun, but we all know what happened last time. And I think voter confidence is questionably low right now. So I think if we are to inject this new and cutting edge process, I think that process needs to come along with absolute guarantees. Just my thought there. Things that were also raised that just kind of give me pause are that you aren't under obligation to follow our township requests. You'll consult with us, I guess. I guess that's nice. but I just feel as though that we're just opened up to kind of sharing, or I guess we're left under your instruction for the township, and I don't know if that sits well with me. I think now here's a question. I want to be sure I understand this. The net savings will be somewhere around $15,000. Is that what I'm to understand?
Based on your clerk's estimates,
Yeah.
$15,000 to $20,000 per election.
I think that is a relatively low cost for high stakes. And I think that our integrity for elections is worth more than $15,000. So another part is there's no termination date. And if we were to terminate, the process to do so sounds unnecessarily complicated. So again, I don't know if this is going to be an exchange or dialogue. Feel free to respond how you feel. But I just wanted to put my thoughts out there so that our board is aware and that our residents are aware. But right now, I just see too many questions and not enough answers. So thank you.
I appreciate that. I will tell you that this is a new frontier in Michigan, that there are many election administrators, probably, I won't speak for the present one in front of me, who I respect deeply, but there are many election administrators right now in the state that are all asking questions like you are. We awaited instruction and procedures from the Michigan legislature for quite some time, and we are finally in a position to have them. That said, there's a cleanup bill right now that the legislature is considering to put additional parameters in place around Proposal 2, not just limited to early voting, but other changes that have been made as well. It is impossible right now to provide absolute guarantees in any environment, other than those that we have already established and seen play out according to Michigan law. It's an exciting time to be an election administrator in Michigan for that reason. It's an exciting time to be a voter in Michigan because there are so many additional options that we are now entitled to, pursuant to the Constitution, early voting being one of them. And I entirely understand your concerns about those questions. Again, it's my position to be here to provide as many answers as I possibly can right now at the moment. What is in that agreement is certain. What we would provide pursuant to the terms within it are certain. We would provide services through 2024. And 2025, that much we can be sure. And, there are the ability to withdraw or modify the agreement as time goes on. We will learn a lot in the first year that early voting is implemented across Michigan, both in this environment and, in other counties and, for municipalities that are conducting early voting independently and along in, county or municipal agreements as well. It's not my purpose to be here to convince you all that you should do this. I am here to present what I think is a very sensible option for the township, given the incentivization that the legislature and the Michigan Bureau of Elections have provided for this purpose. I will tell you that the county is not here to take over elections from the township. We are here because Proposal 2 and the legislature have asked us essentially to be here and provide these opportunities to the township. I can assure you that the agreement will be administered like everything else that my office does to the ability that we can impact it with integrity and will be done in coordination, and I know that that might sound like a subjective thing to say. We are required to say that because that's what the law requires in this agreement, is that we act in coordination and cooperation with the municipalities. I think, having worked with many of you over many years, you know that the Clerk Registrar's Office is a partner to all municipalities here in Washtenaw County, regardless of anything, I suppose. And we really do take very seriously the input from the municipalities within the county. We would take input as it relates to poll worker recruitment, just like we would take input about just about the entirety of the agreement. It's in our interest to make this work both ways because we are placed in a position that we've never been in before, just like you all. So we are trying to do what we normally do in my office, which is support participating or to support cities and townships within Washtenaw County to our greatest extent. And that's what this agreement is.
Ed, just very quickly, we've talked about opting out. Could a municipality not start in and opt in?
Not in the first term. So the deadline is clear for the first term, which would expire at the end of 2025, with some exceptions. So for instance, Manchester Village right now is pursuing or considering incorporating as a city. It is and will be possible for them to join the agreement once it's in effect. But what's clear is that existing, cities and townships have to have an early vote plan by October 25th, and that would be, choosing one of those three things that would be in effect until the end of 2025.
Yeah, Deb.
Ellen, because I'm going to step out. Just really quickly, what input does the township have, Our Lady Clerk, to this election? What would be our township's input?
Well, again, first, we would really need the support of the township clerk's office acting as site supervisors here. I mean, the early vote site would be right here in this very building. The clerk has an excellent staff. We would be asking for the clerk or the clerk's deputy to stand as a site supervisor that would provide support to the poll workers operating right here. We would be asking again for assistance recruiting poll workers, suggesting folks that we should consider hiring for various reasons.
And I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm letting my other colleagues get in.
Sure.
I hear you, and you did say that. But my point is, basically, the county will be taking over the complete election, just with the township's assistance. Is that correct?
No, the county will not be taking over elections for the township. The county would be coordinating early voting on behalf and in partnership with the township.
Right, okay. That part, the early election, but you would be taking over that part. Also, you said the ballots or the ballot boxes or something be stored here, locked down. So when you transfer them, who transfers? And are they locked and sealed?
Yes, so at the conclusion of each day, ballots...
Or do they tabulate them here?
So each day of early voting, ballots will be cast into the ballot tabulator by voters that are coming here. Ypsilanti Township and also Augusta Township would be coming to this site. And ballots will be cast through the ballot tabulator. At the conclusion of each day, those ballots will be removed and stored in a secure container, just like on Election Day right now. They would be sealed by the poll workers, a bipartisan board, just like operate on Election Day currently, and then stored overnight in a secure location that can be locked and monitored as well. And then the next day, the poll workers would come in. We're starting day 2 of early voting. Mm-hmm. They would verify that the seal number was accurate as it was recorded the day prior, that the container had not been tampered with, and they would proceed to allow for voting on that second day of early voting to occur and repeat the process. So break the seal on the container at the end of day 2, add the ballots that had been voted that day, and seal again, secure everything physically, and move on to the next day. Okay. At the conclusion of early voting on that Tuesday night, the ballots would finally be tabulated. So what that would mean is that poll workers would deliver the voting equipment, much like they do now, to the township clerk's office. They would deliver those ballot tabulators to the location designated by the county election commission, whereby another team of poll workers, bipartisan group, would then close the polls on each.
Who picks the observers? Do the county?
The poll workers, again, would be selected and appointed by the Washtenaw County Election Commission. Again, we would...
Even the observers, so you couldn't write in and say you want to be an observer?
Oh, well, no, the normal poll watcher and challenger opportunities would exist in the early vote site and during tabulation, just like they do now for every other polling location.
Okay, thank you.
We have 2 minutes. And are you able to stay longer and keep answering questions?
Yes.
And we'll take a short break and start our meeting immediately after, and move them to the front of the agenda is a good idea.
How long is the break for the starting of the next meeting? We're at 7 o'clock.
7:05?